Hey everybody, Ed here from the Daily Downshift. Hey, haven't made a video in a few weeks. This is the busy time of year for me and my work. A lot of things have happened in the automotive industry, and I've been dying to make some videos. Finally, had a little bit of time today, and over the next couple days, I think I'm going to try to sit down, put together a schedule so that I can try to get these videos out a little bit more. I wanted to start with this one though because this is kind of fun, exciting news. I'm not sure if everybody saw this last week. President gave a speech changing some of the vehicle standards, rolling back some of the standards that have been put in place in the last few years. Most interesting though is, I saw a lot of the comments, and I'll actually bring up some of the comments. I think on this video it'll have it, and I don't think it matter what video you watch, you got a lot of similar comments. People were dying, I think, to get the Toyota Helix or the Hilux in the US. Almost every comment I read on every video I watched, it was the same type of comments about Toyota being able to sell the Hilux here. I'd love for them, for Toyota to sell the Hilux here. I'd love for other car manufacturers, for GM, Dodge, Stellantis, whoever it ends up being, for them to make small mini trucks as well. I don't know if the Hilux is really going to be the one that they sell here. I'm not an expert on them at all. A lot of the ones that I've seen that they have in Asia, some of the other places, they're all diesels. Diesels really haven't taken off in the automotive industry in the US like they have in Europe and in Asia. And I have a diesel truck, but it's a great big diesel truck. It's not a diesel. It's not a small little diesel truck. And I know that diesel cars are not as popular here in the U.S. Emissions restrictions tend to be much tighter on diesels here, and so I'm not sure if President Trump's announcement here is specifically targeting Toyota bringing the Hilux here. I wouldn't hold my breath on that. It could end up being one of those K trucks like they have in Japan, one of the little mini trucks that are really small. They're even smaller than the Hilux. But let me play this video. I'm going to pause it a few times as I always do, give you my feedback, my input. So yeah, let's get this thing started. As always, it's a very entertaining video to say the least.
Those results very soon. Anybody else want to say a few words? Oh, Ted, I can't believe it.
Generally,
I'm easy to miss.
Very rare that I would. Go ahead.
Well, Mr. President, I want to congratulate you on behalf of everyone here for the leadership that you're showing. And this is a victory today for consumers. This is a victory for affordability. Your critics like to say the word affordability. Under Joe Biden and the Democrats, they put mandate after mandate after mandate on cars and trucks, and they drove the price up thousands and thousands of dollars. And with the actions you're taking today, and you put on top of that the one big beautiful bill, most of the senators here on the Senate Commerce Committee, and on the Commerce Committee, we worked together to zero out the CAFE standards. We wrote that into the law that the CAFE standards went to zero. What does that mean? It means you can now, as a consumer, buy the car you want. It also means people's lives will be safer, because what these regulations did is they forced cars to be more expensive and made of plastic instead of steel, because you had to make them lighter to comply with these standards, so you'd get in a wreck and people would die. The result of what you're doing, you're literally saving people's lives.
Let me pause it there. A couple things. I don't know if that necessarily makes cars any safer because you're rolling around in a great big steel fortress versus a plastic one. I mean, in theory, steel smashes plastic, right? I think it's a jump though to say the car's safer. At the end of the day, somebody's still driving that thing, whether you get hit walking across the street by a drunk driver that's driving a plastic car or a steel car, you're probably going to die either way. I I don't think safety is really a reason, a positive here at all. As far as price is concerned, I don't know if any of the changes made during the Biden era specifically caused prices to go up. Inflation was terrible, right? There were a number of other things. COVID hit, manufacturing, resources were, a little bit tight there for a while. You had all these trucks sitting around without chips, and they sat in dirt lots forever. I don't know if that's specifically what made the prices go up. Honestly, I think it was a combination of a lot of things. I think it was greed from the manufacturers really trying to drive up prices. Case in point, I think if you look at the Maverick that Ford has, when they released that a few years ago, I think the MSRP was in the low 20s. And I think now the MSRP on just a few years later on the Maverick is in the mid 30s. That's a 10 to 15K jump in just a couple years for what you would consider a mini baseline little truck. A lot of them were not all-wheel drive at the time, although I know that they have some now. They weren't the hybrid version because they didn't come out with that at first, I don't believe. So I think it's more greed than anything. I don't necessarily even think it was the cost of doing business. I think these businesses, GM, Ford, Stellantis, whoever it is, tried to gouge us as much as they could. There's a reason why there are more vehicles sold in the United States over 100K than there are under 30K. And that's because people continue to pay these prices and manufacturers continue to sell them. Ford's got the Raptor R starting over 100. GM has a slew of electric vehicles that are over 100 between the Hummer, the Escalade. I just saw a video yesterday on how great the new Rivian quad engine, SUV was, except it MSRP is like 130K. So, somebody out there still paying those prices. I would never pay 130K for a Rivian SUV. I think that's crazy. I could get a Tahoe for half that price. And I would be just as happy with that. I don't think you're going to convince me the gas savings from owning an electric vehicle is going to equate to 70 or 80K price difference. So I don't know if rolling back these standards at all are going to immediately drop the prices. I also think, Ford has sold year over year, I mean, over 150K, these Mavericks. They're doing incredibly well. Um, it hasn't pushed GM or Stellantis to release a mini truck here in the US. If that market was so competitive that they really wanted to go after that 25 to 30K market, why wouldn't they release one here sooner? They sell mini trucks in other countries that are a lot smaller. Yeah, I think Stellantis or Dodge has the Rampage now that they've been touting everywhere. It looks like a little mini TRX or little mini RHO. But I know they still sell mini trucks in other countries. Why wouldn't they just manufacture that here in the U.S. and sell it here if they really wanted to go after that 25K market or the 30K market? Ford's kind of got that locked down right now, and I just don't see any of the other manufacturers kind of racing to take that over. But let's watch the rest of this.
And you're making it where families can afford to get a new car. These actions will drop the cost of cars and trucks thousands of dollars. That makes a real difference. And I'll make one final point. About half the members here are car dealers. And I will say my good friend Roger Williams out in the lobby, he tried to sell me a car, which didn't surprise me, but I just want to give props to Mike Kelly. He showed he was savvier because he tried to sell you a car, and you can afford a much nicer car than I can. So well done, Mike Roger. You just went to the wrong customer.
That was $100.
The thing that Ted just said, it's true. Plastic instead of steel. Think of that. And people died because of that. The plastic was plastic in an auto accident, and it broke up, and people were shattered because of that crazy deal. But it's a really good point. Go ahead.
And Mr. President, I'll tell you, in the Senate Commerce Committee on January 14th, we're going to have a hearing with all of the big three there and Tesla, and the entire hearing is going to focus on how your leadership has reduced the burdens on car makers. That's lowering costs, that's giving consumers more choices, and it's producing more jobs in America. And it's highlighting that's a real record of success.
Yeah, well, it's an honor. And, they were going by California. We had like two different countries, California and 15 that followed California, because you had 15 states follow California. And the rules from California were just like everything else. That's why people are leaving. That's why it's such a mess. There's a state with such unbelievable potential. But what they did with the car industry is incredible. And that was, the car companies didn't know what to do because they had two standards, and you can't build two different cars for the same country. And what we're doing today is very big. Would anybody like to say something? Would you like to say something, my friend?
I just want to say thank you.
Thank you.
So there's that video. I'll make another one. I think Jim Farley actually talks in one of the other videos as well, the CEO of Ford, and I'll cover that. I see so many videos probably on a daily basis, and I know most of them are clickbait videos where somebody will say, you can now delete your truck, or deleting your truck is legal. This isn't doing that. You're not going to be able to delete your truck. I live in an emissions-free state right now. There are no emissions. I don't have to smog my truck. I could delete it if I wanted to. I would be fine. I'm not racing to do that right now. But you're not going to roll onto the next Ford dealership within the next month and see a fully deleted emissions-free F-350. That's not going to happen. You also have to remember, and I don't like talking about politics too much on here, but I think it does play a part. This administration's only in place for X amount of years right now. And even if you think the next guy is going to win that supports what he's saying, sooner or later the tides will change. And what happens when you think the next guy is going to get in? He's going to immediately throw on every emissions restriction possible. And the money that GM, Ford would lose, Stellantis, if they ripped all the emission stuff out of their trucks, and then 2 years later, The next guy came in and said, it's all back. They're not going to do that. Are you going to see a lightening up on some of the restrictions? Maybe. Yeah, absolutely. You'll probably see some of that. And I think they've already signed some of that off on the EPA as well. I think the big one was, I think if you were running low on DEF, your truck wouldn't just stall out and stop. Now it at least coast for X amount of miles at a certain speed. They're starting to do some certain things, but this isn't a full emissions restriction rollback. If anything, what I'd really like to see is I'd love to see more of these mini trucks come to the US. If you can't import them, then I'd love to see manufacturers start to make them here. But that goes back to my previous comment. Ford's selling almost 200K of these Mavericks a year. Huge success. It's been a big winner. If GM or Stellantis really wanted to get into that market, or Toyota, don't you think they could have done it by now? It's been 3-4 years that they've had that Maverick out there. They've had plenty of opportunity to roll in one of their mini trucks here from one of their other countries and start to manufacture it here. They're choosing not to do it for a reason. Whatever that reason is, I don't know. I don't work for those brands. Maybe they just like selling more trucks over 100K than they like selling under 30K. And it could be something as simple as that. I am going to make another video though when Jim Farley starts to speak. I'm always interested to see what he says. I think a lot of times he's full of shit though, but we'll leave that for the next video. So hope everybody's having a good one. This is Ed with the Daily Downshift. If you like the videos, give me some comments. I like interacting with everybody in here more than anything. I make these videos because I like to go back and forth with people in the comments. I've gotten some real good ones too. I've gotten some ones calling me out. I am going to be making a reaction video. Had a lot of people call me out on my Hemi video where I made fun of the automotive expert who said that the Hurricane was exponentially better than the Hemi. My video wasn't to say that the Hurricane wasn't or the Hemi isn't, either or. My video was purely to say that there's more reasons to get a Hemi than just a lifestyle choice. I'll lead into the video that I'm making right now, but I will tell you right now that I've seen tons of stats out there, and I'll share some of that these RHOs, some of the high output Hurricanes, they're having a ton of issues, a lot of problems. And not that the Hemi was perfect by any means, but the price difference is significant. And if you're going to pay that for some Hurricane engine, you're expecting to go 150 to 200K miles. I don't think the stats are there to prove that it's going to do it just yet. There's a lot of things out there showing these things are having issues way before that. Maybe it's a great engine of a couple years from now. I do have some stats on that as well, but I'm going to put that out. So looking forward to interacting with everybody. This is Ed from the Daily Downshift. I hope you guys have a great day.